Hey everybody, what's going on? It is James here with Crypto Common Sense. So I just saw a post that somebody linked to me in my Discord from a guy who was calling for over $300,000 Bitcoin in 2020, sorry. And now he's posting about death crosses and golden crosses, which was super ironic to me because just last week or a few days ago, I did a video saying that people don't understand the difference between a real death cross and a fake death cross, and how a lot of times they'll call something a death cross. It's not really a death cross at all. And then, of course, somebody linked this post to me. So here's some cold, hard reality for today. If you're a super bull, realize there's other possibilities. If you're a super bear, realize that there's also possibilities that this is a market cycle that's just getting started and just about to hit its parabolic phase where Bitcoin really could move up in a big way. I'm talking to $200,000+ by the end of 2025. And if we have a bull cycle in stocks that continues to run, I think, even as somebody who's not overly enthusiastic about Bitcoin, I think $200,000 is a realistic target for it. Like I said in my last video, if stocks melt down, Bitcoin is at a very sketchy place from a technical analysis standpoint. Somebody in my Discord pointed out that the buy label had just triggered on Trend Titan, which is one of my proprietary trading indicators. They said, it's pretty much never been wrong. Like a buy label, there's like almost never been a time where it was just dead wrong. And I was like, no, that can't be, really? And so I started going back and looking, and there were some times where it wasn't that great on Bitcoin. But for the most part, it's been pretty accurate. So I want to run through this and talk about this. So if we go back, this is just a Coinbase chart. That's all this is, Bitcoin and Coinbase. It was wrong here, right? It was saying buy in July of 2015, and you definitely would have been stopped out on that buy unless you just weren't using stop losses. But for the most part, when a buy label pops on this thing, it's been a really good area to get into Bitcoin. We can see this was absolutely crazy, down around 345. We can see that this one was crazy. This was in April 2019, buy around $5,000. We can see that there was a buy pop in July of 2020. This was around 10 to 12 grand. And we can see one popped here, and this was around 40 to 50 grand before it popped up to 69,000. Again, buy over here in January 2023. This one was wrong too, though. This was in June of 2023, and it actually ground sideways, and most likely would have stopped you out, or maybe gotten close, depending on where you got in on this candle, right? But then a really good one in October, so on and so forth. So do I trust this label? Well, the reality is this, guys, gals, not really. I really don't trust this label yet, okay? The reason that I don't trust it yet is what we're seeing right now is, I'm almost positive I talked about this in my last video. We're seeing what could potentially be a liquidity trap. This is the same thing that happened back in 2021. They pushed it up above these levels, trapped the bulls, used that as liquidity, and then sent the market down. So we're seeing that same type of behavior right now, right? We've pushed above the highs, the all-time highs, trapped buyers up here, and this could be getting ready to dump. But there's a couple of key things that I'll point out. There are key differences in what's happening right now on Bitcoin and what happened before. And this is why I'm so adamant that this only becomes a liquidity trap if stocks melt down. If stocks don't melt down, I think this will actually be a place where maybe it does sneak down a little bit and actually traps the bears who think it's a market top, who think it's going to be a double top and start expecting this and start shorting it. Could trap those bears, throw a tail down here, and then close back inside the range and absolutely explode toward its next all-time high. That's a very real possibility. I don't think I've talked about that a lot in past videos. So make sure you're aware of that. If this goes down and starts throwing a tail down here, it's very likely a bear trap. It very likely will go higher. But if stocks melt down, then of course, this really could end up being a double top as well. And I say it's so important to watch stocks because if you look at the market cycle chart, there's a very key difference in what's happening right now with Bitcoin and what happened in 2021. When this was doing this back here, and I had posted up my bearish thesis and posted up the market cycle charts, and I thought this was complacency, the counter argument was people saying, how wrong I was because it was technically putting in a higher high and complacency is supposed to be a lower high. And so what I had said when I had based my theory on back then was yes, but if you look at the Bitcoin versus QQQ chart, which is what's called a relative strength chart, how strong is Bitcoin relative to the tech market, it was actually a lower high. It was putting in complacency. That's also what's called bearish divergence. So Bitcoin was weaker than what it appeared to be. It was basically weaker than the tech market. But if we look at the market cycle chart right now and we say what's happening today versus tech stocks, Bitcoin is not putting in a bearish divergence. In fact, it just put in a higher high. So it's putting in a higher high on price versus US dollars and also a higher high versus the tech market, which actually means it's stronger than tech stocks right now. Not a lot stronger, but stronger. So that's a very key difference in today in 2025 and when I was calling the top in 2021. I still think that this phase through here, all things considered, this was the all-time high. It broke through. It had a pullback because that's very typical behavior after you push past it, you test the liquidity, there's a little bit of a pullback, profit taking, etc. And then it looks like people were waiting to buy. It took out the all-time high. Now it's at the top of this, potential channel. All of this to me looks like this area through here. That's what it looks like to me. It looks like we've just basically like right here, looks a lot like this to me. Looks like we made a higher high, which is right here. Looks like we could have a small pullback, maybe to like this area right here. And then it looks like the parabolic phase starts. Boom, boom, right? Huge pump up where we see Bitcoin double. So yeah, right now, I think price action actually looks pretty good on Bitcoin versus the stock market. I think it looks 50-50 on the other chart. So if you see this and you're like, oh, you're super bearish? No, I'm not super bearish. I'm 50-50. This could be a liquidity trap, in which case I want to watch for confirmation of that and then be careful if it starts to move down. If it moves down and then immediately gets bought back up, I'm going to view that as a potential bear trap. And if anything, it would make me more bullish on Bitcoin. If we look at a daily chart real quick, this is not the same line right in the sand. This is the daily chart, so it's a little bit lower than the weekly chart. We're basically coming back down to it. We did have a golden cross. Again, for the record, this is not a death cross. No matter what your favorite guru on Twitter calls it, a true death cross occurs when the 50-day moving average crosses under the 200-day moving average, but the 200-day moving average has to be sloped down for a true death cross. In other words, this blue line would have to be doing this, and then the orange line would have to cross like this. When you get a blue line moving up, in this case a 200 moving up, and the orange crosses down, what's actually happening is you are having a pullback in an established uptrend, which is totally different from a death cross, which is when you're making lower lows in an already established downtrend. If your 200 is moving up, this is not a death cross. It is a dip. And in fact, often marks a really good buying opportunity, which I said probably a month ago on social media and in videos. So this was probably a place that was going to be a fake out. And that's exactly what it was, a fake out before I move up. This, on the other hand, is a golden cross because the 200 is sloping up and we've crossed over it with the 50-day. So historically speaking, golden crosses on Bitcoin have been very, very bullish. There's only been a few times in Bitcoin's history where these end up being fake outs before a move down. Most of the time, they are a sign that precedes a big pump. So I think there's enough signs that point to this being a bull trend. I think there's some signs that point to it being a potential market top. And as in the case with all trading, what most retail traders don't understand is they're trying to play the initial move. And what professional traders and institutional traders tend to do is they play the reaction to the move. It's not the move that makes me take a trade. It's how does the market react? Once a level is breached and once a level is tested, what does the market do? How does it react to that? Because that tells me whether there's likely more supply or likely more demand. And if there's more demand, then I want to be bullish. If there's more supply, then I want to be bearish. But we don't actually know until we see how the market reacts. Because up until that point, this is just a battle being fought. There is some demand, there's some supply. We don't know which side has won or is going to win until it actually happens. Keep in mind, of course, this is the futures on the NASDAQ, and what it actually did was basically put in a little bit of a double top through here, dump down, and it is coming up and retesting this zone, which could act as supply. And if so, then of course the market will move down through there. But if the market is able to break above these highs, it stands to reason there is more demand than supply, and it's very likely the stock market is going to have, a good, at least a couple of months. And if so, that's all Bitcoin needs. Bitcoin only needs a few months to go parabolic. The parabolic phases in Bitcoin usually only last about 4 to 6 months. And then they have blow off tops, and then the bear market starts. So, I think about 6 months ago or so, I did a video saying that I expected the top sometime around October of 2025. That still sounds totally reasonable to me. If the stocks break this level, I still think Bitcoin tops around October. That's what I think. I'm some guy sitting in a spare bedroom, so I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not pretending to be. You should always go out and do your own due diligence and seek out professional financial advice from a licensed financial advisor before making any type of investment in cryptocurrency, stock market, precious metals, or Forex. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Make sure to give it a thumbs up if you did. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. As always, please feel free to leave me a comment, even if you have a different opinion. I'm always open to those. I love having open and honest discussions with people. This is James with Crypto Common Sense, reminding you to please trade safe. And I'll see you in the next video.